In this video, we are going to talk about UVs and texturing in Blender. We will talk about textures, how to apply project textures onto our 3D models. But we're going to learn about fundamentals. If you want to learn everything detailed about texturing in Blender, UV unwrapping, all that, texture painting, you can go ahead and watch these videos. I have a full playlist of, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 videos about texturing in Blender. It's called Texturing Basics in Blender, and you can learn a lot of things there. And also you'll learn more about textures in this video, which is called Learning Everything About Materials in Blender. So please watch them if you need more information. Other than that, you can watch this video and learn the basics about UV unwrapping and texturing. First of all, what are textures? Textures are just image files that you can get from internet, or even you can create your own textures inside of Blender or some specialized software or Photoshop, and save an image file and bring into Blender and apply or project those textures on top of these 3D models. So right now we are only using simple colors and some metallic and roughness properties here, but we have no textures. And in this video, I will apply textures to this leather parts of this chair. Now let's go ahead and apply textures to this chair. First of all, before we can apply, we need to find some textures, right? You can download some great textures online. There are some free textures, free websites. This is an amazing website for free textures. It's called polyhaven.com. This used to be called HDRI Haven, if I'm not mistaken, because you could only find HDRIs there, but now you can find textures, models, everything is free, and the textures, everything is high quality and great. You can support them, and it has a Blender add-on too. As you can see here, we don't need the add-on now, we will just download some textures. So let's search for leather, and we have a few amazing textures here. Let's select maybe this brown leather, so we can download right here in 4K resolution with a blend file or in zip file, and you can also select what you want. So let's download in maybe in 2K resolution, not 4K, and there is less, the size is a bit smaller, right? 20 megabytes. So let's go ahead and download in blend file. Let's download in zip file, not blend file, just a zip file, and you can select the file formats too, as you can see, and you don't need blend file, you don't need GLTF file, you don't have to worry about any of that. Just do what I'm doing now, or you can just download everything, it doesn't matter. I just want to save some memory. Normal, maybe PNG files, because these are less in megabytes. So yeah, let's go ahead and download that. After you have downloaded the zip file, you should unzip. You can right click and extract all, or with any program you can unzip, and now you can find the textures here. And textures by default are just these square shaped images, right? And here you have this color, and you have some other images. I will explain them in a moment. Now in Blender, I can select this object and apply textures right here. But there is a big but, right? There's a big but here. I'm about to show you a completely different workspace, which is called shading. Let's go to shading and let's talk about these things. Again, if you want to learn more, I'm just trying to keep it simple, but if you want to learn more, you can watch the video about materials in Blender, and I gave a lot more details there. So here we have a different type of representation of each material. If you come here to material properties, you have the same thing as here. You have base color, metallic, roughness, IOR, and a lot of other things. Emission, sheen, coat, like emission, sheen, coat, everything is here, and it's plugged in. But here we have a different representation, and it's called nodes, node-based representation, and we can bring in textures here, and it's much nicer, much more convenient to plug in and check everything. Here you can do it by pressing these little dots, and you can come here to image texture and select the texture, and you can do the same thing here by pressing Shift A, texture, image texture, and you can open the file that you have downloaded just and unzipped, or rather you can just drag and drop textures right inside here, just like that. And let's plug it in and see what happens. By default, it's so huge. It's so huge. And the reason is, there are a lot of reasons. So I'll show you how to correct that. So there are a few nodes in this system. This is a node system. There are a lot of nodes which control how texture is projected on top of 3D models. Remember, we are projecting our textures on top of these 3D models. And Blender is calculating on its own, trying his best to make this chair look great. So let's go and bring in some textures. Shift A, and you can search for coordinate, and it's texture coordinates. But you don't usually directly connect it to textures. You have another node which is called mapping. And by default, Blender uses something called UV mapping, and I will talk about it in a moment. So Blender is using this. Let's connect this to this. It's a lot of things to grasp. I know if you're completely new to the system, it's a lot of things to understand now. So go ahead and watch my videos about materials and texturing if you need more detailed information. So let's plug this into here. Nothing changed because Blender automatically uses this. I haven't changed anything. Blender automatically uses this UV projection. Let's unplug that. Let's plug that. But we can use other projecting methods like generated. If you use generated, it's a bit better, right? Smaller and nicer. But this looks horrible. This looks disgusting, as you can see here. Because now Blender is just projecting the image from top to bottom. Blender is putting the image right here, right? And projecting this way, just like that. And we can change this. We can change this and try to tell Blender so that it tries to project the images in a kind of box style. From here, here, and here, from everywhere towards this image, just like that. And also from different sides too. Box model. So how do we do that? Let's get rid of these nodes. We can do it from here. Not flat, but box. And now, as you can see, it's much, much nicer, as you can see. We just don't need to worry about that. It's much better, right? So now let's go ahead and talk about other textures. We have so many textures here, and I will tell you the most important ones. There are 4 textures which are essential in any project or in any material rather, right? It's base color, it's metallic, roughness, and normal. These 4, remember, this is a golden rule. You always need these 4, and these 4 are usually more than enough to create realistic materials. It's called PBR, physically based materials, or physically based rendering. So metallic, because leather is not metal, it doesn't have metallic properties, we don't need that texture. So we have only 3. Roughness, how shiny or how rough it is. We can control this with the texture. And we can control this magic texture. We can plug in this magic texture, which is called normal. I talked more about that in a video about materials, so you can watch. I will probably mention that video 100 times in this lesson. So let's bring in roughness and normal. So where is roughness here? I think it's roughness because it's called R-O-U-G-H. R-O-U-G-H. So let's plug this into roughness. And this blue, or rather, I don't know, maybe violet color. And we have two types of normal, DX and GL. GL is for Blender, remember. DX is for, I believe, it's for example, Unreal Engine. So it's one of them is OpenGL, one of them is DirectX. It's just a calculation method, or I don't know what it is. I'm not very sure about that. So yeah, now, as you can see, it looks terrible because we're not using the same coordinate system. Let's plug this here. You can do that, remember? And also we need to change something because it doesn't look great here. We need to change something from here. Box to flat to box. Now our leather is looking much better, as you can see, much more realistic. And we can make it even more realistic by plugging in this normal. Shift A and a vector normal map. You can just search for normal map because normal maps, as you can see, it's yellow, which indicates its color information, and this one is, again, for me it's blue. This blue color indicates normal vector information. So we cannot directly connect this to this, and it doesn't work very well. Shift A, search for normal map, not normal, normal map, and this color to color, vector to vector. Immediately it looks terrible. First of all, we need to plug this. I already plugged, and we need to change this from flat to box. Still, it looks kind of ugly. It looks kind of I don't know. I can't describe how it looks because we need to change color space for normal from sRGB to usually non-color, and it should fix the problem. And as you can see, it's even more realistic. It has some depth to it, as you can see. If I remove this, you will see what happens now. This is without normal. This is with normal. This is the leather seat. I don't know if it is realistic as you want, but this is it. Here, we plugged in all the textures with all of these interesting but crazy difficult node system. And this is how you usually work with textures, but there is a big but again, which is called UV mapping. Because this model is rather simple, we don't need to use UV mapping, but UV mapping is the universal language, is a default mapping method in all 3D software, including Blender. And if we, for example, export this model into Unreal Engine, for example, the mapping, the texture is not going to look the same necessarily. It will break because we're using Blender's own technique to map stuff like box model, for example, on top of these models. But Unreal Engine's way of projecting images might be different, so it doesn't translate directly to that. This is why we always need to use UV mapping. To explain what UV unwrapping is, I opened the new blend file. So UV is just 2D representation of a 3D model, not 2D representation necessarily, just 2D form of a 3D model. It's just like, for example, this is a box, let's say, right? And you want to paint an image on this box, and you want this image to be continuous. For example, you want to paint some land, stones, grass, trees, right? But they should be continuous. They should, for example, continue from here. For example, you have, let's change this to surface. You draw some grass here, right? And you drew a tree here, but your tree is going to be just like that, and your tree should be continuous. As you can see, the tree, the part of the tree is on this face. And in order to draw like that, it's better to kind of cut the edges of the box and kind of open it and make it flat and put on the ground and draw on top of the flat surface, right? It's much easier to draw on the flat surface rather than drawing on top of this. three-dimensional shape. So UV unwrapping is just the process of cutting different edges and making it flat. I'm not talking about going to edit mode and selecting this edge and pressing V to cut and put it like that. No, it's just a representation. It's not physically cutting the edges of your model. So, but again, anyway, it's done in edit mode. So let's go select. But when you're cutting the edge, you should think about how it is going to open. For example, now I have, let's say I have cut this many edges, and now I know that these two edges will be here, will open here, right? So it will be something like this. Two edges, two faces. This face will be here, this face will be here, and this face will lie here, and this face there, this face there. But remember, if you miss some edges, if you don't cut some edges, for example, let's say I didn't cut these two edges, right? And just imagine in real life, how are you going to make flat of these four surfaces, four faces? This edge will be kind of squashed, right? It will be, it's difficult to open that kind of shape, right? This shape, how do you make it flat? So remember to cut some areas. For example, and again, if you, let's say you cut this edge, but you didn't cut this edge. Yeah, this face will open there. Now this edge will be squashed, this edge will be stretched. So there will be a lot of stretch and squashing in different areas. So you should cut this in a way, don't want to call it cutting, just, I don't know, maybe marking. But in real life, you need to cut with a scissors, right? You need to cut with a knife or something. So yeah, you need to think about that. You need to think in terms of making everything flat easily. So yeah, now let me actually show you how the process goes. You select the necessary edges and you go to UV. If you look here in edit mode, you have this UV menu, and you can bring that menu up by pressing U, and you just mark seams. If you mark seams, then you can deselect those edges because they will retain the marked seam. I forgot this edge, right? U, mark seam. Yeah, but this is not all. This is just the first step. And now you select everything and press U again and select Unwrap. Now, nothing happened because we are not in UV editing mode. There is a UV editing mode, and you can go there, or you can just come here and you can just change it to UV editor. You just go to UV editing and select everything, and you will see that you have successfully unwrapped. And also it's a bit too much, but you can come here and find your UV maps, because one object can have multiple UV maps here. This is one UV map that we have just made. You can remove it, and if you go to UV editing, there is nothing. There is no UV information. If you want to create this again, select everything, press U, unwrap, and you have successfully created. And you can also unwrap only one part of your object, for example, only these two parts. You can just press U, let's go to UV editing, just select these two faces and press U and just UV unwrap. Only those two faces if you are applying a material to only these two faces. So this is also important. So, and other faces will have different kind of structure. If you are applying materials only to these two faces, you can separately UV unwrap them. So it's also possible, I mean. But if you select everything, it's kind of screwed up. It's not great. So maybe you can just select these two faces. Which two were they? These two? You can just move them. You can move them along x-axis and put them here. And if you select everything, it's a bit nicer here. So this is possible. Now let's go back and UV unwrap one of our objects. Now we're in our project. Let's actually unwrap this this monitor, this computer. First of all, let's try to find one interesting wallpaper, Apple wallpaper, and try to give it to screen black, or just let's call it screen now, because it's not going to be black now, screen. And remember, I gave the same material to this little guy, yeah? So I need to change it. I don't want any image to be visible here. I don't know, maybe let's metal parse, that's fine. So now let's find Apple iMac wallpaper and bring it into Blender. Let's go to shading. I'm going to bring an image here. So I brought this hello. It's called hello. It doesn't, it's not visible because Blender doesn't know how to correctly project this image on top of the surface. Remember how we can manage this image? We need a coordinates node, texture coordinate node, and we need mapping node. Shift A, mapping, find them, and let's use generated because Blender by default uses UV. Now we try to use generated, and we can see something. Let's test box, and yeah, it's working. It's not bad. And let's you can move this location of the image. Let's move it along x-axis. Actually, it's not x, I think it's y-axis, and it doesn't move along y-axis for some reason. X, it moves, but y, it doesn't move whatever I do, because it moves along z-axis because I'm using box. Let's try z. Hold down shift for more precise movements. Let's put it in a nice correct place. It's about 1. And yeah, I think we need to change the scale to along x, or no, z, because it's kind of a bit stretched. And let's move along z-axis now. We can do it like that, but it's not great because it's Blender's own way of kind of projecting image. Let's use the universal UV way. Let's test it. Let's delete that and flat. Blender is using UV automatically. It's easy. So let's go to UV editing. Let's come closer and let's select this face and see how this face is looking. This face is right about here. And let's go to material view here. By pressing Z, I went to material view. You can change it to material view from here too. And if I select this and press G to move, you can see the image here. And actually I can just press U and unwrap this only face. If there is only face, you can just press U and press unwrap. Now it's kind of a bit strange, so we can rotate it from here. Let's press R 90 degrees and put it right here, and you can press S to scale and have this nice. You can hold down shift to scale them more incrementally. So we have this nice hello now, and it's very, I mean, it's very intuitive doing it here rather than just typing random numbers and trying to match it here. So it's very intuitive. You can see what you're doing, what face covers what. You can just easily see it here. So let's go back to shading, and there is one problem which is something new to you again, that if we go to render view, everything is calculated, right, including lights. For example, now we can see this light is, we will talk about this more in the next video, but yeah. And if I delete this light, this screen doesn't look like screen. It's just like a piece of paper is sticked on top of the surface, right? It doesn't light anything. In order this to light, we have a nice emission option here. Let's turn emission and emission strength. Emission is just emitting light. Let's bring up the strength to 1, and it's completely white. But there is good news that you can plug this color into this color because it's just white now. You can change the color to, for example, yellow, red, or whatever, and you can see the image very blurry image, and you can just plug this color to this, and here we go. We have nicely lit image. So yeah, this is how you use UV editing and how you can connect images to different slots. Now we can call this finished, and in the next video we will learn how to create a nice environment, how to light our scene, and how to render a nice image.